We've been talking about the 6 harmonies. And reviewing, I think it's good to review the story about Anuruddha at the beginning of each one. First of all, because it's so remarkable. It's good to remember it every day. That when the Buddha asked this group of monastics how they were getting along so well, Anuruddha responded that this was what's going on in his mind, and this is how he behaves. That we live together in harmony, mutual appreciation, and agreeability, like milk and water mixed, regarding each other with eyes of love, because in my mind I'm considering what a blessing it is, what a real blessing that I am living with such companions in the spiritual life. I think with love towards them, both in public and private. I speak lovingly towards them, both in public and private. And I act lovingly towards them, both in public and in private. And I always consider that I should put aside my own wishes and acquiesce to what they want. I should do what they want. Instead of what I want, I consider doing what they want. Yes. Even to think about it is something amazing to us. So in illustrating like the different points of this, so we talked the other day about the list of the 6 harmonies, the harmony, oops, I didn't bring my list in here, so let's see if I can remember them all. Physical harmony, physical actions, harmony in verbally, harmony mentally, harmony in our precepts that we share. The last one is in harmony in our resources, and what's the views? Oh yes, harmony in our views. Yes, harmony in our views. So, I get kind of stuck right on the very beginning ones because physically is hard enough. Today I want to talk about verbal harmony because that one is really hard. Venerable has this wonderful phrase about our words being an arsenal. And she talks about how our language can be our own method of weapons of mass destruction. And it's true within the sense of a community. A few words that fly out of your mouth in the middle of a group meeting can be a weapon of mass destruction for the whole community. I've certainly flung maybe more than my share of those. I kind of have, my own communication style when under attack is to, throw a bomb in the middle of the room and run. Everybody has their style, but that's kind of mine. And you can see the effect that not being in harmony verbally, how that starts to undermine and permeate the structure of the community. We've had this before. We've lived it. We've learned a lot as a community here, but you see this in offices, you see this in families, you see this in churches. People, especially I think in spiritual communities where we're trying to be nice, but behind each other's back, the things we say about each other are kind of outrageous, and they're just kind of mindless. So I was looking for an article, I couldn't find it, but that I read a little piece that B. Alan Wallace wrote. It was an excerpt from one of his books once, where he really examined what's going on when we're talking about people behind their back. Start to pay attention, like, do I feel better after I've done that? Am I trying to make myself bigger? Am I trying to make up from some sense of defect in myself? Am I trying to build community or relationship by having the shared external enemy? There's lots of different, all of them unpleasant, unfortunate motivations, but there's lots of different things we could be trying to get from speaking badly about others behind their backs. But then if we examine, what am I trying to get here? When you catch yourself saying this about somebody, what am I trying to get from this? Am I trying to get people on my side? Am I trying to, make my point of view clear? Am I trying to show my superiority by saying something badly about how somebody did something? So it's useful, I think, to begin to look at what it is we think we're going to get, so we can say, and did I get it? Did it do this? Did it make me feel better? Did it make me feel more important? Did it make me feel loved and useful? Did it make me feel closer to the person that I was fetching with? Was that really the effect? And I think if we can start to take the pin out of our unconscious motivations, that really helps us. You know, so then there's the other ways that we are in disharmony verbally, and that's just to bang on each other to our face. That's when we get into our verbal fights, or we call each other names, or, you know, the energy escalates and we're in places where we don't want to be. So I was thinking about some of the antidotes to this kind of thing. I don't think we need to go into, you know, what does it look like to be verbally disharmonious. But we can look at, so what are some things that we can do to undermine our habit to use our speech to harm others, and that, you know, have that permeate their community. So one thing we learned from Kimberly, I don't know if this was in her sharing, but maybe this was at the table, or maybe I was speaking with Venerable Jampa. One thing that I learned from Kimberly's talk about culture is that this acts of verbally encouraging each other varies from culture to culture. Some cultures, like when they're training students, they're very much more encouraging, yeah, you can do it, and Americans kind of tend to be more like that. Whereas Germans, and I suspect other Europeans, are more like, wrong, you did that wrong, change. And that's really, I mean, the motivation is to train. But the effect on a little sensitive mind is, you know, just to create fear. But that's kind of how the culture does it. I mean, just for my little bit of time in a Taiwanese monastery, I would say the Chinese tend to be more like that, and not, come on, honey, you can do it, which is kind of what I got. I got my share of criticism too, but I would say, so it's just something to be aware of, that we come from very different places, and so even the tendency to want to encourage another verbally, it needs to be kind of like a learned, intentional behavior. And that when we hear a kind of training that is more sharp to the point and corrective rather than encouraging, to also try to hear that with ears that say, oh, they're trying to help me, which is also hard to do. So, to that end, there were two things that came to mind. One is that in Venerable Children and Russell Coltz's book, Living an Open-Hearted Life, Russell has an exercise that is really about working with our own critical thoughts. But I think it would work well for externalizing it too, where he says, simply imagine that you have a child who's learning to play the violin, something very difficult. And that child has one teacher who is like this. Oh, wrong note. Put your finger here. No, put your finger here. No, dummy, do it this way. Put your finger here. Okay, hold the bow like that. No, wrap your finger. No, like this. So that's one teacher. The other teacher says, okay, that tone was not so clear. What if you moved your finger just a little bit? Try that again. Oh yeah, see, much better. Now, you know, this kind of more caring, thoughtful training sort of teacher. So he says, first of all, you know, look in your own mind. What is your self-talk like to yourself? Ding dong, this is my favorite word for myself. Okay, ding dong, straighten that up. You can do this, da-da-da-da-da. That's mostly what I'm hearing inside. But if we're internally having that kind of conversation, then also we're in the position of helping each other and kind of correcting each other. Same voice is going to come out. Don't put the sheets in the thing like this, right? So doing some practice on our inner dialogue, our inner conversations with ourselves can help us externalize better. The other thing I was thinking of is that we were given an exercise quite some time ago to practice every day to look at what are 5 things that are going right. Whether we verbalize that or not, to practice in our mind, noticing in the community and in relationship with each other, what are 5 things that are working? Because we tend to, even in a sort of business-like way, go to the problem. But what if we practiced first, really celebrating that these things are working? It changes our habit of mind. Another antidote to this verbal disharmony way in our habit of not speaking well of each other is to begin to practice writing down people's good qualities. We have to learn to see them, and I think, culture or no culture, we're not really trained to do that. It's not where most people habitually go. But if we sit down and just made a list of the people that we're in community with, or the people we work with, or the people we live with, this person has this quality, this skill, this skill, this skill, this quality, and how do they benefit me? Really acknowledge in a systematic way how much we benefit from each of those qualities, talents, and skills of the people that they bring together. It's a little bit of a tedious exercise, but I must say there was a period of time when I was doing this quite regularly, and it totally changed the way I looked at the community. And actually, now that I'm looking at this again, I think it's time to get back to it. And then the fourth way that Venerable Children mentions when she speaks of this often is to then apologize and admit when we've broken our harmony. Someone came to me yesterday and made an apology for something that I didn't even hear. But this person acknowledged that they had said something that they wished they hadn't said. And they came and said, yes, you know it, you didn't know that I had said this, but I'm sorry that I did, and I want you to know that I apologize for it. Well, what does that do? That immediately opens my heart, and also, creates a level of trust that acknowledges we make mistakes. We are gonna open our mouth and say things that we don't want to say, but when we can go to each other in a relaxed way and say, look, I did this and I'm sorry, it's not how I want to be, then the space to be who we are, to make our mistakes, and then support each other to correct and move forward seems much bigger, much more open, much more relaxed. Then we make our mistake, we try to hide it, and then the tension just remains. We never get to an open place. So those are all some antidotes or some practices I was thinking of to cultivate verbal harmony in a community. Does anybody have any other ideas? Yeah, so that circle of intentionally reflecting on each other's good qualities or things we appreciate about each other and staying open to hear it. Yeah, that was useful. We haven't done that in a long time. Yeah, to be able to listen, and to listen from here. Yeah, to really listen and hear what other people are saying. Not overriding, not correcting, so not interrupting. And at the same time, though, I was just thinking that part of our nonviolent communication training also is helping us learn to interrupt in a kind way, not to cut the person off, but to get to the heart. Yeah, so that's skill. That's a skill that needs to be built to do it properly or do it effectively. So part of communication and part of listening too is to check in the proper timing and to really check with the person before we just launch forth. Is now a good time to have this conversation? Or, yeah, are you open to this right now? Yeah, good. Good. Well, anyway, I think there's a lot of juicy stuff to chew on in all of these, but somehow the verbal one really struck me. Maybe it's because it's my greatest area of difficulty personally. And in lots of different ways. And it's challenging, I think, for all of us what is communication? How do we do that? How do we do it well? And how do we cultivate a mind that can speak lovingly to and about each other, both in public and in private? So it's something to aspire for.